first thing I learned was that there's really a limit to what an expert can do, and that complex challenges, especially challenges that are socially complex, where there's different actors who have different understandings and different interests and different worldviews, can only be addressed peacefully through the participation of those actors. Otherwise, you're imposing a solution through violence. And so in that, the first move is the move of opening or listening or receiving, for which I now use the word love, and that there is another part of this dance without which nothing really changes, which is not only the listening and the connecting, but the ability to make the move, to have intentionality and to act to realize it. And I call that that second part of the story power. So, I think my developmental path was starting off as is typical of a young person, of a young man, of a young Western man, starting off understanding and working with that power drive, but finding the limits of that, and so swaying to the other side of the opening, the receptive or feminine function, the love drive, and then understanding that actually both are required. The moments which for me are most instructive, always, are the moments when things, when you see that there's something there that you didn't realize was there. The moment of error, the moment of hitting the wall. There have been a terrible, brutal civil war in Guatemala, 1 million people internally displaced, 200,000 people murdered, mostly by the state, unbelievable brutality. There was the signing of the peace accords, guaranteed by the international community, and Guatemalans coming together to try to create a way forward, and there were many such activities, and I was involved in one of them called Vision Guatemala, and that was an even more dramatic example of opening, which I've written about, and in particular a moment in the very first encounter of that team where one of the participants told a story about having, he was a human rights worker for the Catholic Church, and he told a story of having been an observer at the exhumation of a mass grave from a massacre, and how when the earth was being taken out of the grave, he saw a lot of small bones in the grave, and he asked the forensics people what happened here, and they said this was a massacre that involved pregnant women, and these bones you see are the bones of their fetuses. So this was a very, very, very strong story in that group of actors from different parts of Guatemalan society, military, guerrilla, politicians, business people, and the group was completely silent. And when the group went on to do many, many things together to contribute to the rebuilding of Guatemala, and when some years later, there was a team from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology doing research on the project, many people referred to that 5 minutes of silence as having been the turning point where they had understood what they needed to do as a group. And one of them used the phrase, this was a moment of communion. In a Catholic country, to refer to a moment of communion is not just doesn't just mean a nice moment, it means a moment of being one body. So this story about the ultimate opening, the opening that occurred when the group felt itself to be one body, was for me the ultimate story of listening and connection and love and knowing what destiny requires of us. But the second part of that same story is where I started to see the limits of this. This story that I just related occurred in 1998, and I went back to Guatemala in 2008 for the 10th anniversary of the project to see my friends. And one of my friends, a leader of a human rights NGO, surprised me by telling me, she said, "Adam, I know you're so, I know you've written with such enthusiasm about the dialogue that we did 10 years ago and the connections and opening, but," she said, "I thought you'd be interested to know that my NGO federation has recently taken out a full-page advertisement in the Guatemala City newspaper saying we would no longer participate in any dialogues." So I was very surprised, and I said, "Why is that?" And she said, "Well, the general belief here in Guatemala is that if we participate, particularly on the part of the government, is that if we participate in a dialogue, we will no longer march in the streets. We will stop our mobilization." And this really, this was when I saw the other half of the story, that that dialogue and connection can be accompanied by disempowerment, by demobilization. And so that's when I saw the two halves of the equation, and this is what I've written about in my second book and that we're working on this week, that there's two traps here, not one. As Martin Luther King said, he said, "Power without love is reckless and abusive." Now this is easy to see how doing your thing without any sense of connection to others produces results that are reckless and abusive at best, genocidal at worst, as they were in the case of Guatemala. But King goes on to say, "And love without power is sentimental and anemic." So to be connected, but in a way that undermines power or that denies power, produces results which are sentimental at best and at worst cynically reproducing of the status quo. I worked a lot in 2008, 2007, 2008 in Israel after the Second Lebanon War, where there was a group of leaders, again from different factions and sectors. In this case, the leaders of all different parts of the deeply polarized Jewish-Israeli society. What I noticed in that work, on the part of the participants and also myself, is that when things got unbalanced, we were able to rebalance them. So I guess this is the key point I'm trying to make, and I'll tell you the story. The key point I'm trying to make is it's not a static thing. When it's going well, it's not that it's stable, it's that it quickly readjusts. So what do I mean? In that context, the way the group started was with power dominating love. What does this look like? It means that everybody is pushing forward their position, their opinion, without much sense of connection to others. It looks like, what does it look like in a group setting? It looks like an argument that just goes on and on and on. So that's the imbalance of lots of power, lots of assertion, but not much love, not much connection. Because the group included members of the Israeli parliament which sits certain days of the week. We had the workshops on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which means that the workshops always fell on the Jewish Sabbath. And because the group included lots of Orthodox Jews, it meant that in a 3-day workshop, 1 full day, we could not work. And my initial reaction as the designer of the workshops was, this is going to be a disaster. How can we have a 3-day workshop where there's 1 day where we can't work? You can't write, you can't have electrical equipment, you can't work. I was completely wrong. What happened was that these times of rest, where people talked together or ate together or prayed together or argued together, you can argue on the Sabbath, were the times that the group came together, where there was a family feeling. So this was the move from a group that was had an excess of power towards this this coming together, this love. And at the same time, there were people, particularly the non-religious members of the group, that found this religiously mandated togetherness to be suffocating. They said, this is not my family, this is not how I define my group. I need to assert myself as saying that, I don't believe in this, this is not my tradition, this Sabbath tradition. So again, the love becomes too suffocating and the power arises again. Similarly, in myself, as the facilitator of this group, or one of the team of facilitators of this group, times when what I needed to do was to say, we're going this way, we have to do this now, please follow me, and times when I had to listen and to open and to help bring the group together. So it's clearer to me now that I tell you the story that the productive state is not a stable state, it's this dynamic movement between the poles. This is not what people are normally taught, at least my education. The implicit assumption in my education was you just need to be a smart person, and then you can figure out what needs to be done, and then that's the end of it. And that's completely wrong. That's and so to develop the capacity to work together with each of us bringing our own perspectives and talents and strengths, but exercising that power in connection, that's what's needed. Education for co-creation is what is needed. What's needed in the adult world is the capacity to work systemically, inclusively, and creatively. And certainly my education included none of those ingredients. And that's a problem. The main impediment in this work is contraction, is tension. Fear and tension and rigidity and blockage and certainty that I know the truth and I just have to get you to understand it, and if you don't understand it, I'll say it again. And so humor is a way of relaxing, but even more of questioning, of seeing the absurdity of that certain situation. And so I think making fun of the situation and making fun of our beliefs and making fun of myself really is important. In the 1990s, I worked in Colombia in a team that included all of the armed actors in the conflict that has been going on for a long time and is still going on. The team I was working with included both the military, among other actors, the military and the paramilitary and the guerrillas, the FARC and the ELN guerrillas. It's the only time that all of those actors have been together in extended dialogue, 9 days in 3 settings. And what was most remarkable about that group was simply that they developed the capacity to speak honestly. They didn't solve the problems of the country, but they learned things and they made progress and they made a contribution primarily because they were able to speak honestly. And one of my colleagues at the time is a Peruvian psychoanalyst named Max Hernandez, and he pointed out to me about these settings that what's needed is not that your dream is the same as my dream, but rather for me to understand that your dream is not my nightmare. So I think the trust comes, from partly from seeing you as a human being, but also seeing that that it's possible to work together or to live together. That's what I mean. It's possible to live together, that your existence does not imply my annihilation. Once I've decided that you can be who you are and do your thing without me necessarily liking it, but without me being destroyed by it, then I can relax. And then we can start to trust, and then we can start to do something together.